So with those funds from the other projects in the existing budget, the budget shortfall decreases to $1.3 million, as seen on this slide. A spring supplemental would be requested, totaling $1.3 million, and would be split between the AMP fund and the transportation fund, with each fund contributing $685,000. It's also important to note that in the approval of the budget, only $650,000 of the CDOT grant was included. So there's $206,000 of reimbursements that would offset the additional funding requested. That $206,000 includes the Revitalizing Main Street grant, Main Street Bakery, and the RAFTA funding. Overall, that is how the engineering department is proposing to fund the contract through project deferment and a spring supplemental. Staff feels it's the most appropriate way to move forward with the entire engineering capital improvements and balance the budget impacts. We've also come up with 5 alternatives. Option 1, the city accepts the bid and proceeds covering the budget shortfall solely through supplemental, which would be about $1.2 million out of both the transportation and the AMP fund. This alternative would not include any project deferment, and also could mean that all projects in the AMP fund might need to be re-examined from engineering to police to streets to recreation to ensure the AMP fund can handle that. Option 2, the city re-advertises for bids. Staff has no reason to think more or decreased bids will be received after speaking to local qualified contractors. With this, the city will also lose our current grant awarded of $800,000, most likely due to the expiration of those grants in June 2023. Staff does not feel a bid will ever be decreased by $800,000 to cover the loss of that grant. Staff currently also has a 100% completion rate for finishing projects associated with state grants. It's not easy to receive those grants, and not utilizing that funding may hurt us in future applications. Option 3, we can revisit the scope of this project and proceed with certain elements. This again, we lose the $800,000 in CDOT grants, as those were presented as a whole project, entire scope. So limiting that scope will ultimately lose that funding as well. Option 4, city can focus on improvements incrementally and still tackle it over a larger horizon. This gives it some momentum, but some time to consider the bigger picture as well. This would result, again, in the loss of the grant funding, and performing work on Main Street is a considerable operation. The more staff breaks it out, the more fees that we have in mobilization, traffic control, and most likely materials. It's key to be aware that there's a lot of contractors. There's not a lot of contractors in the valley who perform this wide scope of work, and bidding could get harder if we narrow that scope. Option 5, city tables this project now due to the boom in the construction industry and the labor shortage we are experiencing. The supply chain problems are making this project more costly and could be transient and self-correct. However, this option prolongs the existence of an unsafe pedestrian environment, and we feel that this project can improve that experience and safety for everyone in the corridor, and we feel that it should move forward. And just to recap with an overall statement, alternatives 2 through 5 result in the loss of the $800,000 in the CDOT grant. So staff is seeking council direction on how to proceed with the funding for the Paepcke Transit Hub project. We are recommending proceeding the consent next week for construction with the associated contracts and obtaining additional funding through project deferment and in a spring supplemental. With that, I'd like to open it up for council discussion and any questions.
Council questions? Rachel.
When can we get started?
Message received.
Yeah, I fully support the staff's recommendation. I know you guys have probably had tortured thoughts over what to do or not do, But this is the one that's going to have the most public awareness of the improvement and affect more people's lives, in my mind. And, you know, the more we're continuing to work on issues like the lumberyard and the traffic impact transportation study will be coming out, the more important it's going to have been for us to make our transit work as best as possible, and as many people as possible wanting to get on it and feeling safe getting on it. So, you know, you got good grants. Thank you. That's not easy work. There's a lot of competition. I think this is overdue, and as much as anything, the pedestrian safety really bothers me on that. I've just been going down myself nice and slow and stop for someone in the crosswalk and see the car right next to me go forward. I usually roll down my window and stick my own hand out to try to give them some better signal, or tapping the brakes. But it's very dangerous, and that needs to be done. And I'm just kind of thinking, I've been here 40 years, and so little has happened to improve Main Street or that bus stop, you know, just very little. We have some flashing lights on one of them now, and I think it was Mayor Tory who got those nice ballards out on some areas that say, watch for pedestrians, and we had to fight CDOT on that.
We got a new bench there, too.
There's a bench. But, you know, I just think it really needs some serious work. And I just don't see prices going down anytime soon. So, you know, it's the bird in hand's worth two in the bush. Let's go for it. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. Did you have anything to add? Okay. John?
I just wanted to agree with what Rachel said. I think whatever we can do to make bus travel more attractive to people is a step in the right direction. The one issue I noticed, Jerry and I had some issues about grading because of that, I forget what it's called, the pedestrian platform that's raised. But at the same time, I understand why that's necessary. That's a safety feature that I think is needed, and I'm sure the skilled plow drivers are going to figure out how to deal with it. Thank you.
Sean? Additional? Ward?
Yeah, I haven't decided if we're painted ourselves into a corner, if we're behind it, between a rock and a hard place. I would hate to have to give away $800,000 from CDOT. One thing that really upsets me is that concrete for this is $510 a square foot, and for the roundabout is $245 per square foot. I don't understand why there's such a discrepancy on construction at the same time. But I guess that this whole construction is beyond understanding. And didn't Gould do the Hallam Street improvement?
Yes, they did do
And Gould has really been a good partner for us.
Great partner. Yes.
I'm taking the staff recommendation, but it's a hard pill to swallow.
So there is a difference in those. You're comparing the square foot. The bus stop at Paepcke Transit Hub includes a widened, thicker curb and gutter that's connected to it, and we are working with the contractor to try to develop a new detail in hopes of decreasing that bit number.
Yeah, I don't like any of the other alternatives. That was, see what other notes there was a question I had about the deferred. I thought we did a concrete replacement, and I thought that included the spring and Cooper improvements.
Yeah, there was not enough budget allocated for the Spring and Cooper, and so we did use some of the concrete replacement fund for that project to get that through. That's a priority project also.
Okay, yeah, I reluctantly approve this. I appreciate all of your time. Don't appreciate the position we're in, and I also have to say I feel by doing this that we are contributing to rampant inflation, but I don't know if there's an alternative.
We got to do our part, Ward. Thanks, Ward. Skippy, Sarah? Skippy?
Supportive of your guys' recommendation. Thanks.
We will place a resolution on consent for consideration of accepting this bid then.
Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, this is a hard one, but this is an important one. You know, I mean, this will be great improvement there. And I agree with Rachel. It's very public facing. It supports transit and the buses, making for a better experience. So in the long run, we'll be happy it's there.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for bringing this back to us for consideration and not giving up on this one.
That was a lot of work to figure out a way.
All right, I would say thank you, Grassroots, but I'm not sure anybody out there can hear us anymore, so, oh, we're back on, all right, good. All right, guys, we are back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Thank you all, thank you to any viewers, and see you tomorrow.
Very good. Thank you. Well, the people in the room heard.
John, John and Skippy, did you check your calendars for March 28th for Rachel's request to start at 3 p.m. yet? We would like to get the calendar updated and let Grassroots know if we're starting earlier that night. Thanks.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Oh, March
It's a
28th.
Tuesday, the 28th.
Whichever, I know it's the 28th. I don't remember what day of the week. I'm sorry, Rachel. You can just email me.
Thanks, sir.
You got a pretty big STR meeting tomorrow night.